At, and I hope this time slot is working out for a lot more people, because I know that the 8 o'clock one, which was 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, was a little bit hard on the East Coast people. So I hope I kind of hit a sweet spot here for everybody. But in any case, I really, really appreciate my audience. And of course, most of you know that this is a call-in show, and I welcome all call-ins because the point of the show is to apply the principles of the mind map to your life, to your system gone wrong, as I like to call it, because what happens in the process of life is that instead of evolving, we take a turn and we start devolving, and we don't know how to get ourselves out of the hot mess. So tonight's episode is titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse and Why You Need a Specialist or an expert in your corner. So let's talk about that and talk about the fact that we all have blind spots. I have blind spots, you have blind spots. I don't see things about myself that you might see, and I need to be told things that I just don't have a full vision about, so that I can self-reflect on them and self-correct on them and climb up the evolutionary ladder of progress as a human being. And so when we are narcissistically injured, we are coming from a very dark space in general. Why? Because we've been deflated. We have been generally lied to, gaslit, another word for lied to. We have been toxically bonded to people who have not had the capability and the desire to bond to us. And so it becomes very, very painful to depart from a narcissist, because we're still holding on to the love bond, and they have way let it go, or maybe never even had a bond to begin with. And so in order to heal from this, it is very, very important to have a specialist in your corner who can help you with your cracked lens of perception, help you see straight, help you to understand where things turn for the worst, where your vulnerabilities are, how they used your vulnerabilities to profit from them and capitalize on their power and control over you. And so let's get into all of this tonight so that you can absolutely see how important it is to heal from narcissistic abuse, and how difficult it is to heal from narcissistic abuse when you're just looking at yourself in the mirror and wondering who done it, what happened, why am I in this mess, and why am I still feeling so raw and angry and hurt and abandoned, and all the feelings that are being triggered in the departure from the narcissist. So again, this is a call-in show, so I would like to invite you to call in, get on the couch, and make an effort to really have a conversation about this. And I do take questions from the chat room, although I do prefer conversations. So let's go to the mind map so that we can understand once again what is narcissistic abuse, which I call a system gone terribly wrong, that usually begins with parents who lack empathy for their children. And if you look at panel number 1, I use the panels as a metaphor. Panel number 1, you could see the light in the background, which is a reflection and a metaphor for your full potential self, the person you should have, could have, would have been, had things gone better for you. The dark spots are all of the wounds of childhood that include physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, smothering, lack of empathy, lack of emotional validation, mirroring, and attunement. These are the wounds of childhood. And we don't escape childhood without wounds because everyone is subject to the multi-generational wounding of your parents and their parents and their parents' parents, and it all trickles down eventually to you. So it is always a good idea to unpack all this with a professional so that you don't have to do what I call the what the Freud, or the WTF, which is what I call my show, Dr. Judy, WTF. What the Freud? What the Freud are we doing? Repeating the past. What the Freud are we doing? Repeating patterns from our parents and their parents' parents. And these patterns are not only multi-generational, they're also multicultural. So we psycho-inherit our parents' psychopathology, and then the cultural wounds that visit us and then play out in our lives and sometimes clash with other cultural rules and roles, people that we want to get married to or be in some form of a relationship with. And then we don't really have a connection there because the rules and the roles are different, and we're superimposing how we think on what they should think, and it doesn't always work out that way. So part of healing childhood wounds is identifying the cultural wounds that visit us and how they don't always line up with the person that you're wanting to have a relationship with, or had a relationship with, or have some sort of a employment agreement with, and so on. So if you look at panel number 1 with all of those narcissistic wounds and wounds of neglect and abuse and so on and such, then you could see that the further we get from our true authentic self, the more we crack up. And the crack up stage is represented by panel number 2, which is, there it is, the cracked lens of perception, the reaction to the wound, the amygdala, the emotional brain, the fight-flight system. So when we are wounded in our first few years of life, we do not have words, we do not have a cognitive understanding of what happened. We just know that there's a disconnection, there's a crack, so to speak, in the psyche, in the system. And this is what we have to attend to, so that instead of coming from reactions and coming from primitive amygdala fight, freeze, and fawn responses, we could bring some logic to our system. We could bring some perspective to our system. So panel 2 is what I call the cracked lens of perception. Why do we need a specialist to help with our healing from narcissistic abuse? Because we have now what I refer to as a cracked lens of perception on the world and on ourselves. So if we're looking in the proverbial mirror, our own mirror, we're going to see things that may not be all that straight and clear and logical. And why? Because if we go to panel number 3, we have encoded all of this messaging that we derived from our parents and so forth into these DNA strands, and I call them the psychovirus, messages that make us psycho. And another way to understand panel 3 is to understand that we develop these horrible core beliefs because we buy into them. So why do we need a specialist to unravel all of this? Is because now we're deep in it. We're now encoded with a bunch of lies and misperceptions and misconceptions. And after narcissistic abuse in particular, we may be sitting with lies that sound like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not capable enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not this enough and that enough, and the list goes on. And so if you don't identify the lies with somebody, then unfortunately you start acting out on the lies and you start believing in them, and that warps your world, and then you become what I refer to as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me give you an example. If your father told you that you were stupid and you bought into that and you believe that, then the lie is, the psychovirus is the message that you are stupid. And if you believe that deeply enough, then you'll start blueprinting your world around this message. In other words, anytime you get an answer wrong in school, you can then confirm that indeed you are stupid. Or anytime somebody tells you that you've made a mistake, then you can interpret it as, of course I made a mistake, I'm stupid. And so your world becomes a proof theorem for your negative core beliefs, which is sort of like a psychological prison, if you will. And this psychological prison then warps your perception of yourself and also warps other people's experience of you, because now you're acting in the manner congruent with your core beliefs. And I'm just wondering if there are any questions or comments so far. Yeah, go for it. There is a question. So
do have a question, and please give us a call at 323-524-2599. But the question is, when seeking a professional help, how does a professional or a therapist address the impact of narcissistic abuse on victims, such as mental health and anxiety and depression and PTSD?
well, anxiety, depression, mental health, PTSD are all symptoms of narcissistic abuse. So again, we've got to go back to the blueprint, because if we're going to live in treating just the symptoms are easily going to regenerate and easily become re-triggered if we don't understand what created those symptoms. So that's the negative aspect of traditional therapy from the way I see it, because people in the profession are so busy treating the symptoms themselves, they never really get to the cause. And I'm not saying blanketly don't treat the symptoms, because sometimes the symptoms get so destructive and ugly that you've got to treat the symptoms. And at the same time, really, you've got to be looking at the cause of the symptoms. In other words, you've got to look at what the damage was. Why are you anxious? Why are you depressed? So in the case of narcissistic abuse, the person who narcissistically abused you and took advantage of your vulnerabilities are probably people similar to your family of origin. If you're in a toxic relationship with somebody right now or getting out of one, chances are that you were in a toxic relationship with your family of origin. And so that's what laid down the blueprint. So the way I like to put it is that the person currently in your life is the trigger, and the parents or the blueprint of the people that you grew up with are the cause, because they laid down the foundation. Then you got embroiled in these people that are familiar and familial, and that's why you're in that situation, because you know no better. You've had a blind spot for years. You thought it was normal. You thought that this is the way things should have, could have been. And of course, now you're breaking down because of how they are. And so to answer your question, yes, it's important to treat the symptoms. If you're not sleeping well, then by all means, treat your amygdala and dial it down. There are all kinds of ways to dial down the amygdala, including yoga, meditation, hot baths, getting physical activity, hanging out with your pets and allowing your pets to be soothing for you, surrounding yourself with loving people who get you and can do a better job of mirroring you. So I'm not saying don't treat the symptoms, but again, if you don't treat the cause, then expect to do a 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 and reinfect yourself and be re-triggered by the symptoms. So it just kind of goes around and around and around, and then you end up in panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wounds of childhood, reactions, poor encodings, chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And if you could show everybody via the mind map, I think it would be very helpful, because you're just repeating the psychological infection, if you will. And if you could put up panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, people can see it visually. There it is. The wound creates a reaction and encodes into these horrible core beliefs, and that all breaks you down. And then the next chapter is the chaos, and then the defenses, and then the breakdowns, which become therapeutically breakthroughs, because we've got to do something better than just break down and use all of this knowledge and wisdom that were blind spots to therapeutically break out of the old system gone wrong. So if you're only treating the symptoms, you're only treating panel number 5, which are the defense mechanisms or the reactions to the wounds. The defense mechanisms being, for example, defenses like OCD defense against anxiety, or using alcohol to numb the pain, or other drugs or food, or anything that really puts a wall around you and presumably numbs out the feelings. So if we're only treating that, we're not really getting down to it. And that's why it's so important to have a professional in your court, because the professional is the person who's supposed to sit back and enlighten you to what happened and why you're in this mess and why you're picking people like this into your life, and why it is that you believe things about yourself that have basically been transmitted to you by your family of origin, things that were transmitted to your family of origin by their parents. And so we've got to stop the whole system, is what I'm saying. And in order to do so, we've got to dismantle the whole system by pulling the curtain on the lies and misperceptions and misconceptions of the past. In my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which hopefully you have a copy of now, and if you don't, you can get it off of Amazon.com, or you can just ask us or fill out the necessary information, and we shall email you a PDF copy of it. It's a great way to learn the system, along with watching my YouTubes and understanding how the mind map applies to your life and why you're in chaos. And then specifically in healing from narcissistic abuse, I designed a video, and I will get to the questions in a second. I designed a video titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, which you can purchase and download. And if you really want to do it yourself and engage with a professional, well, I'm the professional that you can engage with via the journey, the video, the journal, which is included in your video, the mind map, which obviously is included in there in the book. And then if you want to enlist the support of a professional to help you personally, you can opt to do that. So when I say enlist the help of a professional, if you don't ever want to see a therapist and talk to a therapist, you don't have to, but do something, at least get the instruction manual, because this is like a psychoeducational course, if you will, a course on you. So, we take courses, history courses, math courses, any courses, but I think a course that we have to take is a course on our own psyche. We've got to mind map ourselves and learn about our mind map and our ways that we think and feel and break down and put that all together so that you can have enlightenment instead of repetition. And go ahead. Yes, I'm ready for those questions anytime.
All right. So the first question is from YouTube. What if the professional is not experienced in narcissistic abuse? Now, are all therapists, should they be qualified in that?
Well, at this point, where our world is so narcissistically injured, I think all therapists should be qualified, but they're not. Absolutely not. And as a testament, I have personally encountered so many people who've been in traditional therapy for way too long and they didn't learn anything, and their therapist was not an expert in narcissistic abuse, did not understand systems gone wrong, only treated them for their symptoms, or worse, just let them talk and talk and talk and cry and talk some more. And I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of letting people just take over a session and vent. You can vent with the friend. If the person in the chair across from you isn't teaching you something, if you're not better as a result of your sessions with your therapist, then why are you paying for that person's time, and why are you wasting your time? So yeah, I really advise that you get somebody that is an expert in narcissism, because it takes a lot of knowledge and experience to catch the nuances of the ways they manipulate and gaslight and and um, and 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 bond people to them, so that it's very, very difficult to get out of the narcissistic toxic bond. Um, there's so much to know that the average layperson doesn't understand the intricacies and the nuances and the very painful entrapments involved. And so you need someone who has insight into this and somebody who has knowledge of how to work the system so that things can be identified, things can be dismantled, and things can be shifted. So I hope that answered your question. And I know there was another question in there.
There is another question. So this one says if somebody doesn't have the means to visit a therapist, and you kind of mentioned it earlier a little bit about, pets or just treating yourself, a little better, but recommend to aid in the healing process from narcissistic abuse outside of therapy if someone can't afford therapy.
Well, number one, I put together so much material for you. There is a course that you could take called the 9-panel mind map system for healing, and it addresses all kinds of childhood wounds, including narcissism, and that is available at a very reasonable fee. And again, I want to emphasize, if somebody has a hard time with payment on this particular video, just contact the clinic and we'll break it down so that we can either give you a discount on it, or you could pay it off slower, or whatever is going to work for you. Because I realize that not everyone is in a position to pay high therapeutic fees. So I've put a lot of time into creating free material like these YouTube episodes. And I have so many YouTube episodes. I must have at least 500 plus of them, right, Tony? I've been doing this for
Oh,
10.
yes.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to learn and you don't want to pay, fine, then learn from me, learn from other people who are online, read books, get my free PDF if you just don't have any money at all, or get the Amazon.com paperback version. It's not gonna put you in the poorhouse if you do that. And definitely, if you need healing, please ask me specifically, reach out, and I'll try my best to make it happen so that you can avail yourself of more material to heal this. Again, I don't want to leave out the important fact that it is pretty important to have somebody helping you, at least on some level. You may not choose to invest in a whole bunch of sessions, but I would, if I were you, invest in some private sessions so that you can get some direct feedback to your specific situation. Because remember, video, a book, so on, we bring a lot of I bring a lot of examples, but at the end of the day, your injuries are personal to you. What happened to you is your unique injury, and it's important that somebody address it with you on a one-on-one basis. So I do recommend it. And another thing is that when you're not doing well emotionally, it's going to affect your pocketbook. If you're not doing well emotionally, it's hard to make money. It's hard to motivate yourself to move forward. It's even hard to get up in the morning, take a shower, brush your teeth, make your bed, and go out there and try for an interview. So these things are connected. So, in other words, the better you are emotionally, the healthier your body will be physically, and the healthier you will be fiscally, because you'll just be more robust in all these areas. So they're all interconnected: mind, body, soul, finances, all of it. Okay, any other questions in the chat room?
Yes, but we'd love to have you guys call in at 323-524-2599. Dr. Judy would love to speak with you. Don't get spoiled.
I know I'm an enabler. What can I tell
Right,
you?
right.
Yeah.
But actually, I like this question. It says, can you describe the stages of recovery from narcissistic abuse, and what role does the professional play or the therapist play in each stage?
Well, I think the first stage is just you know, for those of you who've been narcissistically injured by being abandoned, I think the first stage is discovering that you were, quote, in love with a person who didn't even exist. So it's a stage of shock. You may have thought that this person was loyal to you. You may have thought that this person was in your corner. You may have thought that this person was the best thing since sliced bread. Or maybe you had an inkling that the person was cruel and disconnected and manipulative. Whatever stage you were at when you were discarded, there's still this feeling of being stunned, like, what just happened? And what just happened is that you enrolled in a toxic relationship that was predicated on a toxic bond that was created before you even signed up for the relationship. Because if you would have had a healthy blueprint with parents who were nurturing and mirroring and attuned to you and possessed empathy, I don't think you would have signed up for the toxic relationship. They would have been too unfamiliar and unfamiliar. And so they wouldn't have really been on your radar. You would have just said, ugh, no, thank you. And you would have stepped out pretty quickly. However, if they were somewhat similar or very similar to your family of origin, then on some level you thought this was normal. On some level you thought that all people are sort of like this, so I better just deal with who and what I have. And so again, the first level is this level of shock. Unbelievable. How could he or she have left me? Like, What did I do wrong? Because remember, narcissists are good at projecting their anger onto you and blaming and shaming and holding you responsible. And the reason for this is because they don't want to be responsible. They don't want to own their own stuff, because for them, owning their own stuff means admission of guilt, admission that they're bad, admission that something's wrong with them. And that's just too narcissistically injuring to them. So better that they blame you for it, or yeah, that it's your fault. So that's the next thing that you have to deal with is, what did I do? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not skinny enough? Am I not successful enough? Am I not lovable enough? All of these things, all of the core beliefs that you were encoded with will come flaring up. So this is almost like the temperature rises. Okay, so if you have a flu, now the flu is heated. Now all of the core beliefs are activated, and you feel rather sick. Temperature is high. There's something wrong with me. I'm not this and I'm not that. And if only I said this, or if only I said that, if only I gained weight, if only I lost weight, if only I made more money, if only I was a little bit younger, if only I was a little older. There's always something wrong with you. And so when you see a professional, they can root cause it back to the old core beliefs that you were encoded with, so that you no longer buy into them and no longer allow the narcissist, who has probably departed at this point, to influence your way of seeing yourself, because you've had probably not such great mirroring and attunement from your family of origin. Now you're left stripped down and you look in the proverbial mirror, and what do you see? All of your flaws, all of your ugliness, all of your lacks, and so on. And why is this happening? Because the narcissist usurped your power over yourself. And now you've deemed them the boss of your self-esteem. So if they think this about you, it must be true. If they think that you're not worthy of being their partner, you make that to be true. And then guess who you demean and devalue and destroy? So you join them in the demean and devalue and destroy. And that happens to be the point at which you now turn against yourself. Okay, so they've discarded you. They've told you how horrible you are and how unworthy you are. And now what do? You repeat it upon yourself. And then you go straight to hell. Chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So the chaos is the boundaries that are now broken. The toxic bond is still operational, but the actual bond has been broken, and there's no support system, and not even a fake one that you were engaged in. So the support system is gone. And if you look at panel number 4, the bonds are broken, and it's very, very disorienting. So if you could see the bonds broken, this is the toxicity that's released from the breaking of the narcissistic toxic bond. And then you feel lost in space. And as you get more and more confused and more disoriented and more lonely and abandoned, you start to put up defense mechanisms to shut down the pain. And now we're in panel number 5. And those defenses can be smoking or drinking or sleeping more or checking out with your cell phone all day, or really anything that supposedly keeps you safe. So now you're in a bubble and you don't want to leave the world, your little nest, and now your world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. and there's no opportunity for growth. And at the end of that game, you totally break down into a deep, dark hole of depression. And that's where most people come to see a person like myself, because it's just become too unmanageable. The breakdown is harsh and it's hard, and there's nobody there to grasp onto. And that's where intervention is so important, because you don't want to be sinking into your hole in the soul, the hole in the soul that was created by your past blueprint. So now you've got to have somebody literally take your hand and pull you out of the hole in the soul, so that you can start taking inventory on how you got to the breakdown. So I hope you guys are getting a picture of why it's so important to have a professional on your team, and not just any therapist, but a therapist who knows what they're doing with regards to healing from narcissistic abuse. It is a specific body of knowledge that people study, and if they're not experts in the field of this particular area of psychology, then I don't think you should be spending your time and money and energy doing some sort of a traditional talk therapy that only addresses the woes of the day. It does require psychoeducation to learn about your mind and to mind map yourself and to understand the cause behind your choices in life, so that you never choose this way again. One of my favorite lines in my book is a line by Einstein, and he says that smart people solve problems and geniuses prevent them. And so we want to be in the prevention seat. We don't want to run into a problem and solve it later. We want to prevent ourselves from signing up for these horrible relationship dynamics in the future. And the only way to do it is to understand why you did it, and what a narcissist looks like, and what it feels like to be in a healthy relationship, and what it feels like to be in an unhealthy relationship, which you probably already know. And I do know we have a little time for a call or so. So if you want to call in, now would be a great time to do that. And in the meantime, I guess I'm going to enable you guys and take questions from the chat room if there are any others.
All right. Well, let's see. We do have another call. I mean, not call. I wish we did. Call in. We'd love to hear from you. But this one is kind of, you touched on this again, but I think it's good to kind of reiterate this. How can a therapist help victims of narcissistic abuse in recognizing and setting healthy boundaries? I think that's important to maybe kind of touch on again.
Healthy boundaries, I think that we have to look and see why we have the boundaries that we do have. And we usually have the boundaries we have because they were established in our family of origin. For example, if you come from a family of drinkers and it's just normal to have 2, 3, 4 alcoholic beverages every evening, that becomes the norm. And so that becomes your boundary. If you're in a family where people insult each other and demean and devalue each other on a regular basis, that becomes the norm. And so you think that there's nothing wrong with it, because why? You've lived this way all your life. So somebody has to step out of the system. That's why I make such a big deal about having a specialist in your corner, because you need an enlightened witness to normalcy. Because if you don't have that, then you think all of your life has been some form of, okay, it's normal, it's not that bad, Why am I making a big deal of it? Well, only now are you making a big deal of it because it hurts so badly. Only now are you making a big deal of it is because it broke down so hard on you. So let's not have it loop through again. Let's not have you go through the multi-generational transmission process of more systems gone wrong. And the more you can heal and unravel your past, the less likely you are to pass it on to the next generation. And that's part of why I've done so much work in this area, is because I would like to see a better future for my children and your children. And who better to blueprint a better future than our healed self? So if we take our unhealed self and pay it forward to the next generation, we are going to have an unhealed next generation. And if we keep having a lot of people who are unwell, then we're going to have this psychovirus go global, which it already has. And then we're going to have a broken world. And our broken world is not going to end up in any kind of a paradigm shift or a new blueprint of healing. It's in bombs and so on, and then we will have a breakdown that a bunch of healthy people created for other people. If you're healthy, you play the game of love and intimacy instead of power and control. If you're healthy, then you want to put your resources together with other healthy people, and you don't want to demean and devalue and destroy other human beings. So that's how important it is to heal individually, because if we don't do it, we're not going to do well as a human race. So this whole project, the Mind Map project, started with a project called Join the Human Race Healing Global Disconnect. And then I figured out that in order to heal globally, we have to heal individually. So it's upon us now to become more humane. And narcissism is not humane. Okay, sociopathy is not humane. Humane means having empathy. Humane means caring about your fellow humans. Humane means helping other people become the best of their best. And here's my model for humane. Look at panel number 789. Humane is interconnection. Humane is a paradigm shift out of the 𝗬𝗏 system. A paradigm shift is that new way of being, a new way of seeing, a new way of treating each other, and it's evolutionary. So if you look at panel number 8, you will see a DNA strand, and this is the new DNA strand, the healed DNA strand, and it represents a new consciousness, a world where we are interconnected and we evolve together and we climb up the evolutionary scale together, and we figure out a way to become sustainable. And so as a result of a system gone right, we can create a world that is a more united world, a united humanity. So I know I got very broad here, but I wanted to, because I want to emphasize how important it is to go from micro to macro. If we're healthy on a micro level, we're going to be healthier on a macro human level. And it all starts with attunement and treating our children with empathy and connection and being there to mirror them and offer them unconditional love and nourishment, both physical nourishment and emotional nourishment with good boundaries, and that's on us to make sure that we are doing a good job in passing on a better blueprint to the next generation. So if there are no other questions.
There are no other questions.
No other questions?
No.
Is everybody healed yet?
Where's babies come from? Maybe other than
Right, right. Right. So just, I know that there are people out there struggling financially, but please understand that if you're better mentally and emotionally, you'll do better financially. And if you don't heal yourself, then you're going to be spending an awful lot of money on healing your body and eating horrible food that'll break you down and drinking more alcohol and smoking more cigarettes, doing more drugs. So, where's your money going? Into filling the hole in your soul, which will make you worse and end you up in a breakdown. So I'm inviting you to invest in yourself, whether it be a small investment like just reading my book, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect and learning the mind map system, or going a little bit further and getting one of the videos, or signing up with a professional to work with you individually. Whatever level you're at, there is some level of help for you. So take advantage of it. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining in, and I will see you next week. Good night, everybody.